Okay. Right, we'll make a start now then, ladies, because it's nearly 5 past. So if anybody else joins on, they should I'm sure they won't be far off, is what I was going to say. So this week, I feel like it's a very important week to talk about what we class as like flexible dieting and how to balance having, social events. It doesn't necessarily specifically have to be on a weekend, but I've classed it as like weekend calories because we know that generally, the kind of culture that we live in, we kind of like have a routine Monday to Friday and then a completely different routine Saturday and Sunday, or even Monday to Thursday and then Friday to Sunday. So because obviously things are starting to open up again now, people are wanting to start to see each other, weather's getting a bit warmer, barbecues, going for a few drinks on an evening like this evening when it's gorgeous and sunny, are all totally things that you shouldn't feel that you have to miss out on just because you are, kind of like doing this program. There obviously are some constraints and there are some considerations that we need to make, as you do with any weight loss program. But hopefully, by explaining this method to you in a little bit more detail, it will help you to understand how, not just during the program, but also after the program, whether you are doing things solo or whether you are still kind of continuing with me, how we would approach the times when you come to me and say, Charlotte, I've got a wedding this weekend to attend, I've got an anniversary meal that has been planned, all of those types of things, which are, really important life events that you shouldn't have to miss out on, or you shouldn't have to like kind of be calorie counting for or anything like that. That's what I really wanted to share this week and kind of talk about on this week's webinar. So the first thing to mention is this concept called flexible dieting. So it is exactly what it says on the tin. It's a flexible way to diet. It means basically that although we provide you with your calories and your protein, that you can be flexible with how you kind of build up those calories. There are a few different ways of like kind of using flexible dieting, but obviously it's kind of anything which isn't a rigid structure every single day. And you guys are already kind of doing one of the elements of flexible dieting, because what I will always say to you guys is, as long as you've hit your protein goal, if you still have calories left over, you can use those how you want. I don't tell you, oh, you can only have this, or this. As long as you've hit your protein goal and you are staying within your total calories, you have control. So the most popular / common methods of flexible dieting are known as if it fits your macros. So you may see this kind of abbreviated or acronymed, should I say, as IIFYM. So this is essentially what you guys are doing now to a degree. There are varying degrees of complexity to it. So obviously your macronutrients are carbs, protein, and fats. We only really focus on protein to start you guys off. There are some clients who I've worked with long term where we control carbs and fats as well. But for all of you guys, especially when you're first starting out, the number one macronutrient to be focusing on is protein. So we focus on your protein and then fitting in your total calories. So that's essentially what you guys are doing now. As long as you hit your protein, then you can make up the rest of your calories however you want, with very limited kind of restriction from me. Another method is, I couldn't find the actual proper name for it, but I class it as like calorie loading. So this is what we're going to talk through in a bit more detail tonight. And this is essentially where you load your calories into certain days to benefit your lifestyle. Sorry, can I just ask, I think it's Laura. I'm just going to put you on mute, Laura. So calorie loading is essentially like you come to me and you say, okay, yeah, as the examples that I've just given, I've got a wedding coming up that I'm, attending. So I need to be able to have more flexibility on that particular day. So we will load your calories from the week into that particular day so that you have that freedom and flexibility, and then we adjust everything else around it. So things to remember with flexible dieting, there are still obviously a few constraints if you are going to make it work. So just because it's flexible, it doesn't mean that there is zero structure. So ideally, we still want to count as many of your calories within the week as we can, for it to be as effective as possible. You are still responsible. I don't know what that word was that I just said. You are still responsible for monitoring your balance of food. So obviously, whilst fat loss can be achieved staying under your calories, eating anything, I always use the example of you could have one giant slice of chocolate cake every day that was 1,000 calories, but well, probably wouldn't be that giant when it's chocolate cake, but if that is all you are eating during the day and you are burning more energy than that, then you will still lose weight. But what we want to achieve is a good balance of everything. We don't put a lot of pressure on the, micronutrients, on fiber, only where it feels necessary. But we do still want you guys to be getting a healthy balance of your foods. So don't take it as, oh, well, I could eat chips like McDonald's chips every single day, and that's all I need to worry about. Because yes, you're right, you absolutely could, but we do still want to promote a healthier way of living, because we still want you to be feeling good, fueling your body in the most optimal way possible. And the third thing to remember as well is that it isn't right for everybody. So flexible dieting is great, and it's personally worked really, really well for me. But that doesn't mean that it is right for everybody. And I have had clients who flexible dieting just doesn't suit them and their lifestyles, and where they're at on a personal level. And there isn't anything wrong with that. Everybody is an individual. I treat all of my clients on a one-to-one basis. So just because I kind of have a generalized approach for everybody, if we recognize that something doesn't work for you, it's not the only option that you have. But the thing to mention is that you as a client have to be able to share with me if things aren't working, so that we can make that decision, and for you to be aware to recognize if you don't think it's working for you. So with regards to flexible dieting, what I'm going to talk you through is a bit of an example. I felt like this would be the best way to kind of describe it, to illustrate, how it would work. So let's say Hannah, this is an imaginary client, wants to lose weight. Her coach has set her calories at 1,700 calories a day with 120 grams of protein. So as you guys all get, very similar kind of structure, 1,700 calories a day, 120 grams of protein. So as Hannah first starts out, what we want Hannah to do is to try and stick to these calories every day. So Monday through to Sunday, 1,700 a day, 120 grams of protein, because as her coach, we need to make sure that those are the right calories for her. And the most straightforward way to do that is to just know that she's having those, or like around those every single day, that we're not kind of filtering them about here and there. Then after a few weeks, she has a wedding anniversary coming up and knows that her husband has planned an anniversary meal on the Saturday for them. So this is where she can start to pull on flexible dieting to support her goals. She discusses this with her coach. Her coach recommends that she allows an extra 1,000 calories for Saturday. So where normally she'd be having 1,700 calories a day, on the Saturday she has 2,700. Now, when you look at Hannah's weekly total calories, every week they add up to 11,700. Oh. Sorry, guys. I don't know what's just happened there. I bet you was all like watching that thinking, oh, what's she doing? Can you guys all like hear me / see the screen properly now? Yeah, okay. Right, just give me one sec. It isn't my battery, but I'm just going to plug my laptop in just in case, because it's just running off its own battery at the minute. Sorry about that. Okay, let me go back to the start. Well, not the start, but let me get back to where we was. Okay, here we go. So we was talking about Hannah's flexible dieting approach. So what we've talked about so far, we know that we would need to change her calories for that one Saturday. Every week, Hannah's total calories add up to 11,700 per week. This week, she'll be having 2,700 of those on the Saturday. That leaves her with 9,200 for the rest of the week, meaning that Monday to Friday and Sunday, she'll need to have around 1,500 calories a day to stay within her total 11,700 for the week. So she's essentially taken 200 calories from every other day to load them into Saturday so that she still sits underneath her weekly total, but she's able to have that flexibility and that freedom on that particular day that she needs it to. And the other thing to be really mindful of is that her protein has to stay the same every day. Even though the calories drop, the protein girl doesn't get to be flexible like that. With the protein, we have a daily minimum, and you absolutely have to stick to that every single day. It doesn't quite work the same. So she would still be having 120 grams of protein every single day. She would take those 200 calories from the rest of her foods rather than from her protein. So hopefully that makes sense. So that kind of explains how you can, be more flexible with your calories to support, a social event, to support like a night away, whatever it might be. That's kind of like what we would look to do with flexible dieting. And the thing that I will say about flexible dieting is that it has to be a conversation between the two of us. So I need to know if you have something like that coming up, because if I'm not aware of it and you're kind of going off doing that on your own without my knowledge, then I would probably be questioning, oh, what's going on? Why have your calories gone up this day and they're not as much the other days? And I can support you with it. Like, it's something that I, stand by and live by. So just let me know any times that you have got situations where you feel like that example, would be really beneficial for you. So we then move on to talk about like weekend calories. So the hard thing with what our class is like weekend calories is that there's a lot more to it than what you think. So in the example that we just talked about, Hannah's coach estimated that she would need around 1,000 extra calories. Now, this has come from a conversation between Hannah and her coach, and Hannah's coach has thought about how much alcohol or, what drinks she's going to be having that night, how many courses she's going to be having. Is this the only kind of extra thing that she is going to need those calories for? If it was a full weekend away, it's going to be a completely different approach to the flexibility. Again, so every single situation that this kind of applies to has to be dealt with slightly differently. And that's why I say about, always discussing it with me, because some examples, some situations, it's going to be really straightforward. Others, we might have to kind of like discuss it in a little bit more detail. So things like, so the coach has estimated that it should need around 1,000 extra calories, but this is probably still being conservative, and it does still take into consideration that in most instances when I'm doing this with a client, I still recognize that there is a possibility that they're going to go over those calories. So we try and, kind of prepare and buffer it as best as we can. But there's always, for me personally as a coach, there's always that in the back of my head that if I'm doing this with a client, there is a high likelihood that those calories aren't going to be accurate. And the reason for this is because in those instances where you're doing something where we can't track the calories. The reason why we can't track the calories is because we don't have control over what ingredients are going into it. Even some places where like calories are printed on the menus, that's never 100% accurate. They are like a guideline, they are an average. You have to consider things like the cooking oils that have been used, have the calories that have been calculated allowed for those. In most cases, probably not. And then you have to consider things like drinks, nibbles that have been provided to the table that you kind of subconsciously having. There's a lot of things that can kind of come into it. So during your 8-week programs with me, especially for those of you guys who are in your very first 8 weeks, it is totally okay to have, the odd big event like this. Like especially when it's things like, say, for example, if somebody is still having a wedding at the minute, it's not the type of thing where, you would weigh it up and say, well, what's more important right now? And, as somebody who promotes living like a balanced lifestyle, I would never say, oh no, don't be enjoying that after the year of lockdowns that we've had. That would always take precedence. But obviously you can see how if you was to be trying to do this every single weekend for, every tiny event, and you weren't having any kind of control over what was going on, you can see why results are going to take you longer to achieve. It's not that you wouldn't be able to achieve them, but if you really want to achieve maximum success, you can understand that you would need maximum control. Now, where we recognize that, that kind of what I would class as like your extreme bodybuilder prepping, that's like the ultimate level of control in like my examples. We know that that's not what we're trying to achieve. We want to achieve that balance of being able to do things with friends and family and still being able to achieve the results that we've got. But there always needs to be a bit of a weigh up of like, okay, am I still achieving the results? If I've stopped achieving the results, is it because I'm trying to do too much of this and I maybe need to be a little bit more controlled? And there's always those conversations to have. So it's just to be aware of that. Something that I additionally wanted to talk about, obviously now that the world is kind of reopening again, as much as I would be jealous of all of you who are able to drink alcohol, I wanted to talk about the calories that are in alcohol because they can vary massively. I've picked this graphic up from an account that I personally follow, and I would recommend for all of you guys to go and follow him as well, because he does a lot on educating you on like the differences between calories, does a lot of stuff on like how you can still be achieving the calories that you want. It's a really, really good page, very informative. So he is called @the Fitness Chef. So this graphic, to mention, it doesn't even include things like Copperbergs or other branded fruit ciders. They contain around 330 calories per bottle or more. The thing with alcohol is that under the current guidelines, as far as I'm aware, they don't have to print the calories that are in them like on the fronts, like what you get with all of the food now. So it's a little bit harder to know immediately. Like you do have to, if you're kind of concerned about it, you do have to really go and look for the information. So if you're having like 1 or 2 drinks and say, you was just having one with an evening meal, you can probably account for these without really having to make any swaps, because if you have this awareness of the calories that are in them. But obviously, if you are having a night out or there's a social event where you're really not going to be monitoring like the amount of drinks that you're having, which is totally okay, it is wise if you are on a fat loss program to opt for the lowest calorie options, because it's all just going to help you to be in as good a position as possible. So clear spirits with diet or low calorie mixes are always a really great option. Prosecco is actually a really good option as well. So you can see on the graph here, like a 250 ml vodka Diet Coke is about 60 calories. gin and slimline tonic, about 70 calories. I will just say the flavoured gins, which are obviously super popular now, my personal favourites, they have more calories in them than a straight gin. One thing that somebody's told me, like not a client, but it was like someone that I was just chatting with, they have gin. I'm sure it's like vodka or gin with flavoured water. Now, it kind of makes sense because it's just like fizzy flavored water. Not, I haven't tried it, so please don't hold me to it, but obviously a flavored water is like 0 calories as well. So that could be a good way to still be able to get the flavor, like with something like a gin and flavored water instead, than having to have like the flavored gin. So yeah, just want to mention, like, let me know if anybody does actually try it or has tried it before, because I am quite keen to know a bit more about it, and as soon as I am allowed to drink again, I'll definitely be giving it a try. But yeah, so you can see on this graph, like a Jaeger bomb, 210 calories. I am definitely been partial to a Jaeger bomb in the past. Pint of cider, 200 calories. Pint of beer, 195 calories. And these are all averages, not estimates, but like averages as well. So there's going to be some that are going to be higher calorie and some that are going to be lower calorie. So it is just one of those things to mention. So that pretty much covers off what I wanted to talk about with regards to flexible dieting, because it's just to give you like an overview of how it works. It's not super technical, it's supposed to be easy. But it isn't necessarily just for those times that you have social events that you want to attend. So the great thing about flexible dieting is that if you have a day where you just happen to go over your calories, things can happen, and that is life, that is normal, providing that this hasn't come as a result of an emotional trigger, for example, a binge eating episode. I'll talk about the binge eating episodes like after this. You can adjust the rest of your calories in the week to account for the day you've gone over. So you're still in a positive place with it. You're still feeling good about it. So say you go over by 500 calories one day, like I've put an example in here, last minute change of plans. Say, for example, you're working on a big project, you have to stay and work late, and someone orders in a takeaway pizza. You need food. Like, I would never say don't eat it. Like, if you're past a regular meal time, you need to eat. But it is just one of those situations that happens. These types of things can happen. So rather than beating yourself up about it, like, you can get a rough estimate or work out how many calories you've gone over that day, and then adjust for the rest of the week, as I showed you in that example before, to allow for what we class as like the overspend on that day. It's the same as if you are using your bank account. Like, on a weekend, we all spend more than we do during the week, but we don't then like kind of stop spending altogether during the week, unless we've literally like got into our overdrafts. But instead, we just adjust our spending habits for the rest of that week. So it's exactly the same with using your calories. Like, see your calories as your nutritional bank balance and treat it the same way. If you happen to go over, you just adjust your habits for the rest of the week to allow for that. And there's no need to feel good or bad, like negative about it. You just adjust. It's just one of those things. So that flexible dieting approach doesn't have to just be used for those events. Like, it can be used anytime that you accidentally, go over your calories. It just happens. As I said at the top, if you have gone over your calories due to feeling some sort of emotional issue, as an example, this has led you to like binge eating, then my advice will always be the absolute opposite of doing this. The reason being is because if you are suffering with, something like binge eating, the worst thing you can do for recovering from binge eating is to then additionally restrict yourself. What we want you to do is we want you to be able to move past the binge eating episode as quickly as possible and just be able to like move on from it. If you have to spend the rest of a week, the week after, on reduced calories because of the binge eating episode that you've had, then that's not going to create a positive environment, because you are constantly reminding yourself. It is like essentially like beating yourself up about it. And whilst, yes, you will have gone over your calories for that day, and therefore we're not like as likely to see the results, we don't focus so much on, you know, the specific calories and on the results whilst I'm working with somebody who's recovering or trying to move past binge eating. Instead, what we focus on is what were the triggers for that emotional, you know, like what were the emotional triggers for that binge eating episode, and we work on kind of understanding behaviors around the binge eating. That's our primary focus, rather than focusing on the weight loss results. So I hope that just explains like why I would not, you know, be advising a client to do this if they are recovering from or trying to recover from something like binge eating or other eating disorders. So yeah, that's just an additional one to be aware of. But that covers everything that I wanted to talk about this evening with regards to adjusting your calories. I did have a question. She's not on this evening, but I did have a question from one client about, so if they are going to say, like what she put was that she's going to a pub on Sunday, they have the calories on the menu, so she knows that they have low calorie options. She's going to know exactly how many calories that particular meal is. How would she kind of log that in MyFitnessPal? So say the meal is like 600 calories, we're just going to go with. So obviously you would need to make sure that the rest of your calories throughout the day come up to the amount minus the 600. And then what you can do in MyFitnessPal, obviously it's something that you're not going to be able to track with regards to like scanning a barcode or anything like that. But if I just show you this on MyFitnessPal, what you can do, let me just turn my screen down. I don't know if you'll be able to see this very well, but when you go to add your meal in, and there's a little plus button right at the very top. So I've clicked on breakfast here. I'll just move that out of the way. I've clicked on breakfast, and then next to where it says breakfast, there is a plus sign at the top. So you can press that plus sign. And then along this menu here, there's one which says quick add. So what you can do there is you can simply add in the calories for the meal that you've had. So I have MyFitnessPal Premium. In Premium, you can also add the protein, carbs, and fats if you know it. Obviously, most menus won't have that on them, but you can at least put the calories in, so you've accounted for the calories. So that would be my kind of recommendation for if you are kind of doing something along those lines, then that's how to kind of still account for the calories and be able to see those in there. So I hope that helps as well, guys. So does anybody have any particular questions about this that they wanted to ask? Does it all make sense to everyone? Just let me know if there's anything else that you want me to cover, and if not, then we can finish up there. No, that's all good. Everyone's staying on mute, that's fine. Obviously, as I always say, if you do have any questions, then you can just drop me a message. I'll be back online properly tomorrow. So yeah, I think that covers everything for this evening's webinar, guys. I hope you all enjoyed it and found it useful. If anybody has any suggestions or, you know, like any topics that they want covering in future webinars, please let me know. I'm always open to us, you know, kind of adding stuff in, changing stuff around. So yeah, hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening, guys, and I'll speak to you all soon.